Greetings. This is Justin Allen, the Elite Nurse Practitioner. Welcome to the Elite Nurse Practitioner Show, podcast dedicated to nurse practitioner entrepreneurism and achieving financial freedom, where I talk directly with nurse practitioners who need help. Listen up, our market is saturated. Jobs can be scarce. We are underpaid. We are undervalued. We are taken advantage of by the sharks within the healthcare system, and frankly, screw that. I'm sick of it, and it's time for a change. And listen, I'm here to help make that happen. We are powerful. We can forge a path where we are in control of our career and ultimately our financial and personal well-being. You do not need to submit to healthcare administrators and your doctor overlords. You do not have to take a measly salary. You do not have to work 50 to 60 hours a week. There is a different way, and I'm here to show you that path. This podcast is raw and unfiltered. I have not talked to the nurse practitioners in this podcast prior to the call outside of an email exchange to schedule the episode. What you're about to listen to is a consultation session between a nurse practitioner and myself. It is real, it is unscripted, it is unplanned, and I have no idea what we're going to talk about. Anything and everything can happen during our conversation. The nurse practitioners in these episodes are struggling with an issue in their professional or financial life, and they have reached out to me for help. My goal is to help the nurse practitioner with actionable advice that will enhance and improve their professional, business, and financial life. My other goal is to hopefully help my nurse practitioner sisters and brothers build a more productive, powerful, and free life. So I hope the content and information within these podcast episodes does just that. All right, onto the episode. Hello, everyone. Today, we'll be talking to Jessica and Laura, who are both psychiatric nurse practitioners. They are both working for others right now, but they partnered together and opened a mental health clinic about a year and a half ago that is doing fair. They are needing help on how to grow their business, marketing, and how to integrate some additional services into their practice. Hey, Jessica, Laura, how are you guys?
Doing well. Thank you.
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for hopping on here, guys. I know this is our first podcast where we have two nurse practitioner entrepreneurs. So this should be a pretty interesting one. So let's just start how we start off with most episodes. So just tell us about yourself, what you guys have been doing in terms of work goes and how you started your practice. So Jessica, you can start.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So I've been a nurse for about 7 years, went back to grad school during the course of that time, working in the ER. And then first job for one of our major health systems here, working inpatient acute care psych. That's how Laura and I met during the pandemic. We had some time to think about the future we envisioned and kind of what our ideal private practice would be. We learned that we both were interested in private practice and making this mental health outpatient clinic that was exactly what we thought mental health was lacking. And so we decided to just go for it. And we started thinking about what that would look like, how we would coordinate everything. It took us about a year from the time that we started talking about it until we opened our doors. But that's kind of been our process in a nutshell.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Laura. Let's see. I think I started as a real nurse, if you will, in the late 90s. Then graduated with the nurse practitioner. I think it was around 2006. So I've always practiced in psychiatry in a wide variety of areas, community mental health, consultation for both primary care and hospital consultation. My first love is consultation liaison psychiatry, which I currently practice still full-time, moving to part-time, hopefully here soon, for a fairly large level 1 trauma hospital in the city. Met Jessica, as she said, during the pandemic. The pandemic really threw everyone for a loop, so we were a little delayed in getting started, but it did take us about a year to get everything in order. And then we launched our business in June of 2021 as a telehealth platform only because we did not have office space. And so then by about a year in, we were able to lease an office. It's kind of one of those setups where you rent an office kind of thing. So we do that now. So for the last year, I've been able to offer in-office appointments and telehealth. And then, as Jessica said, we just, we're a fee-for-service practice. So we're cash-based, and we've been doing that and doing fairly well. We've seen some growth. We've seen some stagnation in the last 2 years, but I feel like we're trying to branch out there and get some other things going too as well.
Okay. Sounds like both of you guys have been doing quite a bit. All right. So the practice, just walk through this a little bit. So you guys started this about a year and a half ago. What services are you offering predominantly?
We are medication management. Both Laura and I offer that. And then we also have a therapist in-house. So we do both the therapy component and medication management. We also offer mat treatment for like a monthly subscription of $299. We've had a few people take us up on that offer. I would say maybe during the course that we've been offering it, maybe 3 or 4, and we've had 50% retention on that. So 2 people are still involved with it.
Okay. So how is business then? How much time are you guys putting into this and how much money are you seeing?
From my standpoint, I would say I'm doing about 20 hours a week right now. I have some other jobs that I do 20 hours a week as well. So between the two, full time, maybe even a little more than full time from the other 2 PRN jobs that I do. When we initially started, so Laura and I both funded the practice ourselves. So the first year we were in business, we were able to recoup everything that we invested. So that was great. And we started off with no debt and we're still there. We don't have any debt. And then pulling up our metrics in our platform, I can see that over 2022, our money in went up by a little over $38,000. So from the previous year, we, doubled what we had brought in. So our only advertisement was on Psychology Today for the longest time. And just at the end of last year, we branched out and did a Google ad. And I would say that's been running since maybe the beginning of November. And I would say we've seen some results from that, but I don't know that we know how best to utilize that feature. So we have the ad out there, but I don't know if we've optimized it that well. And I don't know if there's other ways that we could be advertising ourselves to kind of help.
Okay. So you're putting 20 hours into it. Laura, how much are you putting into this practice?
So I work full time and in a hospital. So whenever I can do in office, I try to do that. But on average, I'd say I'm putting in probably about 20 hours a week with everything. Maybe some weeks more than that, maybe some weeks less.
Okay. So you guys are both putting 20 hours a week into this practice and you're making roughly, it sounds like, maybe an average of like 5,000 a month.
Correct.
Is that 5,000 profit or is that 5,000 gross? Is that just like the revenue coming in or is that what you guys are actually profiting?
No, that's just the revenue coming in.
Okay. So you guys are not making very much money for the amount of time you're putting in this. I mean, would you agree?
I would agree. And I would say that as far as the hours go, like some weeks I've got hours open and no people to see. So I think it fluctuates too. Like there's probably some weeks that I see that I'm doing like, 10 or 15 hours worth of work, but I certainly would do more. It's just they're not there to see.
Gotcha. So your time investment here, you could probably make, as a psych NP, you guys can easily make between 75 to $100 an hour. So, so you're not really making that much money here with how much time you guys are putting into it. So I guess my question for you is, why do you think that is? Do you find yourself, you're spending 20 hours a week in the business? How much of that time is just kind of sitting there at the office waiting for patients to show up? How much of that time is you actually like working, actually doing stuff?
Yeah, I'll say I'll answer that for me. So I would say that there is lost time that there aren't people to see. So I think that is the biggest takeaway. Like I could certainly cut down on the other PRN jobs if there were more people in seats, so to speak, right? And that seems to be where our deficit is. I think we have a service that people want as we are around longer and kind of word of mouth gets out. We get a lot of really good feedback from our clients and our clients tend to stay with us, so we seem to have good retention, but it's kind of getting ourselves out there so people know that we even exist.
Sure. Any thoughts, Laura?
Yeah. So in my perception, because I work Monday through Friday and all my appointments are typically in the evening time. So I don't really have the experience of like waiting on people to come necessarily. It's more like rushing to get to a place where I can go see a patient most days. So I'm hopeful that as I move to a part-time position at the hospital that, maybe I will have that problem where I'm sitting and waiting and, maybe in that space, what to do to bring more people in.
Okay. My train of thought here is going to two things. Why hasn't your patient volume really increased that much over a period of a year and a half? And another question is, why are you staying cash only? Cash only psych can work if you're in the right market. I'm not really too sure what kind of market you guys are in. So I guess let's start there because I think it's probably one of the most important ones. So are you guys dead set on cash only? Because I feel like if you went insurance, you probably would get really busy probably pretty quick.
Yeah, we're not opposed to insurance, but I think what we come up against is that colleagues of ours, we hear so many grievances about the headaches that they're receiving over accepting insurance and
Yeah.
the reimbursement rate for us versus the psychiatrist and how that changes. And then we would have to have a biller on staff to really negotiate all of that. Right now, we take care of the billing because we can manage it. But if you've got the codes that you've got to manage and you've got to follow up with rejections for payment, so I think that's been the reason we've tried to stay away from it. And we've had, again, it's slow moving momentum, but we've got some. And I feel like it allows us to have full autonomy over our practice without having to play into that part that insurance is going to dictate.
Sure. Okay. So
That's
yeah,
my take. Yeah.
yeah. Those are all pretty much on point. That's why insurance sucks. Like, let's just, that's why insurance practices are just such a drag.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. You have to have a biller, you have to have a billing company help you,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Ultimately, you're at the whims of what the insurance company says. You're a nurse practitioner, so therefore you're automatically
Right.
getting reimbursed less than an ND and blah, 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 blah. I mean, the list goes on. So, all right. Laura, you have any thoughts on in terms of insurance versus cash, or is that pretty much spot on?
Yeah, I mean that's been our initial resistance. I've kind of been a little bit more, and Jessica, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think I've sort of been the one that's sort of been on the maybe we should think about taking insurance camp, starting with maybe, one that people ask me about a lot. I've lost a couple of patients due to our service model being cash only. And then, I hear the insurance horror stories and then I kind of go back to, well, is it really worth it? But then the people, one of our mentors that when we first started that we were talking with, who has an insurance based practice, told us stay cash for as long as you can, and then almost saying, "I wish I would have stayed cash," kind of thing. Although she has been far more successful than we have as far as her business growth. Great when she started taking. I can't think of words right now, but when she began to take insurance. So I guess I'm kind of more in the middle about it.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah. Well, listen, okay, I'm going to give you guys two different perspectives here from two different NPs that I've talked with before in the past. I know a psych NP who has a insurance-based practice and she does very, very well. I mean, it's $1 million plus a year business, multiple psych NPs working for her. It's a very robust practice. Getting to that point is a pain in the ass because you have to deal with all the insurance. You have to figure out your flow with it. You got to get a good biller. It takes a little longer to build and you have to kind of have the nerves for it and the motivation and the drive to deal with all that bullshit up until you get to that point. She had to deal with a lot to get to that point. Okay. But it's a very, very profitable business now. On the other side of the coin, though, I know a psych NP who does, medication management from a cash perspective, specializes more on ADHD treatment and anxiety treatment. Like it's a very, very focused, specialized niche and it's cash based, kind of has a little specialty in like treating pediatrics and that kind of a thing. And she does very well with it being a cash based practice, right? She doesn't really have to have all this staff. She doesn't have to have all these fancy EMRs, medical billers, all this stuff. She doesn't just have like a little one office room. And she makes a very healthy 6-figure income. Okay. So both models do work. It's just they require a little bit of a different strategy. And so insurance based, you're probably going to be seeing a wide plethora of psychiatric illnesses, right? You're going to see everything from anxiety, depression, insomnia, ADHD, blah, 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 so on and so on. It's a general psych practice. With a cash-based practice, it tends to work better if you have more of a focused niche. Because when it comes to a cash practice, marketing is the name of the game. It's basically with any other kind of business, like you have to market. When you have an insurance practice, you don't really have to market as much because you accept insurance. Insurance companies basically just send patients to you and that sort of a thing. So when it's cash based, you have to have a focused niche because it allows your marketing efforts to be a little bit more effective because you're marketing to a specific target population and, and that sort of a thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Any thoughts on that?
So, for instance, right now we see it all, right? We've got anxiety, depression, folks with personality disorder, I mean, all of it. But one thing that I'm really passionate about is addiction. That's been a specialty of mine for a little while. With the MAT services, I know you had a Suboxone arm of your practice at one point. Is that something that you think is worthwhile going down and kind of tailoring that marketing towards that clientele base?
Sure. Well, before we jump into that, Laura, how do you feel about doing, more of the addiction stuff?
Oh, yeah. I've worked in addictions. I enjoy working in that population. I also really like the young adult population. That's kind of like where my niche is. With that said, though, if I did want to maybe say that, we do have this LLC that we're creating basically just called Wellness. So it'll be a DBA as Helix Health Group where, we're going to have this sort of aesthetics, wellness, Jess has a vision for a dietitian, things like that. So there is that things kind of cooking over here, marinating, if you will. So
Gotcha.
just wanted to, yeah.
So if you guys decide to go the addiction route, Jessica, sounds like you're more of like maybe the adult. Laura, maybe you could be more of the younger adult, adolescent. So that's very, two specialized things. Cash-based addiction treatment can work. It's going to be a little bit slower to build up to that, but it can work. The Suboxone clinic that I started was basically like the first practice I ever started. And so I thought, I was trapped in the mindset that I had to accept insurance. And so I'm going to go down that route and all the headaches. And ultimately I failed because I hated dealing with the insurance. It was mostly just that. It wasn't really the patients. It was mostly just the insurance not being reimbursed and so forth and so forth. Essentially, it was just a mess. It was my first business ever, and it ultimately failed. Then I pivoted. My next business was basically cash only. Only been cash only since, and I've had success. But I like Suboxone. I think opioid addiction is a great little niche. I think it's fun. I think it's rewarding as well. But yeah, if you guys wanted to do that, I guess it comes down to your market, though. How big of an area do you guys live in? What's the economics? What's the demographics like?
Yeah, we live in a fairly large city. So we're right outside and near Indianapolis. So our practice is on the north side of Indianapolis. So there's quite a bit of people to reach out to, and there's not a lot of options for rural communities. And what is available is, anecdotally, what I hear is kind of community mental health clinics or, a private practice office where they can go and they can get the medication, but there's no other treatment really with it. It's not like it's therapy or group in addition to it, unless you go to the community mental health clinic route. And Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do see that there's this gap of folks who are, let's say, middle class, upper middle class, and so forth, who are struggling with addiction, but they can't visualize themselves in a community mental health clinic, or they have tried that, they don't like it, whatever it is, or it's just they can't get to it. And we do offer, a hybrid model for both the in-person and telehealth. So I feel like there's some opportunity to maybe market ourselves to some smaller communities around us who don't really know we exist.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's about people maybe not knowing that we're out there. A lot of our referrals have been word of mouth. We do have a little bit of social media. At one point, we did have a meeting with someone who was going to sort of take charge of our social media account, if you will, and we would be responsible for responding, but they were going to kind of push that a little bit because that seems to be where a lot of people go these days to kind of see what's out there. The problem with that is, it's expensive to hire someone to do that. I don't know how much more traction we would get with that. And so I think if we could target and specifically market, I would think social media would be the place to do that. It's just Jess and I are neither very socially media users, high
Sure.
users of that.
So yeah, no, that's a good point too. Okay, so you guys are it sounds like, you're in a decent area. You have literally millions of people within, an hour radius of probably where you're located. Like, there's plenty of patients here. And like I said before, you only need a couple hundred patients. You got a pretty profitable practice, right? So I don't think that's an issue. Like you said, you hit the nail on the head in terms of the demographic. There are always going to be more upper middle class, higher class people who, also suffer from addiction. They got addicted to hydrocodone pills in college or whatever, right? Or they had surgery and they got addicted to the Percocets and, so forth. Addiction isn't racist, basically. It affects everyone, right? So anyways, there is a market in that. I know people who have opened up opioid addiction practices, and they basically, they cater to people who want to remain basically private, right? They want to keep very, very private, very anonymous with this sort of a thing. People will pay for that. If I had an addiction issue and I wanted to protect my privacy, I would be more than happy to pay $150 a month or whatever it is for that. Easy, So there is a market to that. It's just what Laura said. How do you market to that? How do you get those people, right? That's the hard part. But once you get those people, though, they typically then know other people, and you get a little bit of a snowball effect in terms of, patient referrals and word of mouth and that sort of thing. You guys have done only the psychology today. That's pretty much all you've done.
That, and then the newly done Google ad that we started in November of last year.
And how well is that doing?
That's a good question. I look up the numbers on it. Hold on, I can tell you on that.
Google search ads typically work pretty well for people who are, actively looking for the service. That's a hot lead. They are looking, so they just need to find it.
So one of the things I've heard you tell other people when they talk about their ad is like your practice name needs to come up in those like search engines. And ours is by design a little more concealed, I guess, because mental health is getting a lot more acceptance and traction. I think again, another thing the pandemic has done is really made people understand that everybody or a lot of people struggle with mental health needs, right? And one of the things we wanted when we made the name of our practice was to give it a little bit of this could be any type of health practice, right? So it's not necessarily mental health baked into the title. I mean, how do we get around that? We just have those keywords on our website so it comes up when someone Googles it.
I think if you guys are dead set on staying cash based, I think that first off, you need to have a very specific niche here first and not be so broad in general. I don't know of very many cash based practices that are kind of broad in general that do well. I just don't. They exist, but they're the strict minority. They really are. They don't work that well. And so if you guys really truly wanted to maybe go down the opioid addiction route, the addiction treatment route, I think you need to do some rebranding here. And that, like you mentioned, I really feel like that needs to be in your name. I think that it just needs to be painfully obvious from the point of contact with the patient. And the point of contact with your business is the Google search. They search for it. That's the point of contact. Right then and there, they know exactly what it is that you're doing. You don't want to give your patients a job, right? Don't give them a job. Don't make them figure out what it is that you're doing. Make it painfully obvious.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
So I feel like that if you guys are going to go down this route, I feel like that you probably need to do some rebranding. It could be a DBA under your LLC. That's fine. It's not a big deal. You can create a separate website for it, whatever. And you guys can still do the other thing that you're doing. You're throwing out multiple lines out there and seeing kind of what bites. But I feel like right now you're just not focused on.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like that you guys need to focus on one or two things and leave it at that if you want to stay cash based.
I got it. So like right now, like I said, we have a couple of clients who are taking advantage of our MAT services, but the rest of our clients aren't. So maybe deciding which route we want to go with this. And if we don't want to go that kind of the MAT treatment route, then we kind of either nix that and kind of go all in on maybe one or two specifics and kind of narrow our focus.
Pretty much. Yeah. You guys said you don't really have that many MAT patients. You seem like you have more patients doing the other stuff. What's the most common thing you're treating right now that people are willing to pay cash for?
Yeah, so I might answer that. I do have a good portion of folks that have addictions that I see. However, it's not primary opiate addiction. So we're talking about a different types of addiction. But primarily depression, anxiety, and ADD, I would say, are my top three.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And then I have general addiction, not opiate.
Well, don't those four things, isn't that kind of like 80% of what most psych practices are going to be seeing and treating?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very general still, right? I think you need to break it down even more, like out of that anxiety, the ADHD, the depression, like out of those, which ones are the highest?
I would say for me, anxiety and ADHD.
Yeah, I would second that, probably anxiety, ADHD. But I want to add a little caveat there with the anxiety. A lot of trauma.
Yes.
Lots of trauma.
So then instead of just general anxiety, like why not be focused more on traumatic anxiety? PTSD, these sorts of things. If someone has anxiety problems that's tied to a trauma, most of the time they know this, do they not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. I hope everyone's enjoying the episode so far. I just wanted to take a quick break to thank everyone listening and also give a big thank you to all of my social media followers and email subscribers. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to our email list at www.elitenp.com and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Email subscribers will receive updates on new weekly podcast episodes, multiple weekly articles we publish, new courses, and everything else related to helping you succeed. Remember, all elite nurse practitioner courses are designed to help you build a niche practice, increase your financial strength, and to break free from the rat race. If I can break free and then other countless nurse practitioners can break free, then so can you. Additionally, please share this podcast with your other nurse practitioner sisters and brothers out there. The more NPs that venture out on their own, the stronger our profession will become. Now, let's get back to the episode. Tracy, she's a nurse practitioner that I interviewed, and she helped with the functional medicine course. She had an entire topic about traumatic events and how it basically affects your health. So like she focuses on that and she does very, very well. I mean, that's a niche in itself.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I feel like I do a lot of kind of, even though I'm not doing specifically therapy, it kind of is baked into some of my assessments, conversations with clients, and a lot of just validating them that the physical responses that they're having are real, even if other people aren't able to understand it, and then giving them options on, how to like downregulate their nervous system, both from a pharmaceutical standpoint and that non-pharmaceutical standpoint. And oftentimes I will say that those are the folks that we get so many positive statements from, and they stick with us because they're like, no one else has ever understood this or broken it down for me this way. And so they stick around. So that's a very good point.
Do you see that as well, Laura?
Yeah. And as we're sitting here, like, and thinking, I'm like, that goes along with addiction. There's typically a lot of trauma in addiction as well.
Absolutely.
And, something that Jess and I have considered has been bringing even the ketamine type stuff into our practice, whether it's the S-ketamine, which is the nasal spray. Maybe something in our name needs to be, I don't know, trauma and addiction expert treatment. I don't know, however you want to word it, but maybe that would be a pretty good focus. And we could catch a lot of people with that. There's also a lot of trauma and ADD. Often, I have young women that have finished college, they're in their career, and because they were a woman, they were never diagnosed. They weren't bouncing off the walls in class. They went unnoticed and struggled a lot in college. And it's been a trauma course for them as far as, maybe failing at one job or two and not really understanding why. So I do think there's a lot of room there. While our name may be focused on trauma and addiction, certainly you could even catch some general psychiatry type concepts within that patient population.
Well, I think you just found your niche. I think you just found your name. I think trauma, like seriously, I think like trauma and, something, the Trauma and Addiction Healing Center, whatever. Okay. Come up with just a catchy name that has those two terms in it. And then exactly what you said. Sure. ADHD might be a symptom or a condition resulting from the trauma. Therefore, you have a page on your website that talks about that. You have a blog post that talks about that. You have a blog post that talks about addiction and trauma and how trauma affects the autonomic nervous system and blah, 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 so forth and so forth and so forth. What this does is just going to create more content on your website, more keywords on your website. It makes you look like an expert because that's what you guys are anyways. So show the world that people search this stuff on Google. These articles will come up. They will read these articles and they're going to explore your website and be like, okay, wow, these two girls sound like they could probably really help me. And, it's affordable. It's only $75 a month or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's a good strategy. I think it's a hell of a lot better than what you guys are doing now. I think it will really give you guys the focus. And it sounds like you guys are probably somewhat passionate about it too.
Yeah, I would say even in talking about it now, when we were kind of focusing on the MAT component, I kind of felt a little part of me go, that's not really exciting. And then as soon as Laura and was kind of talking about the other components that we do, I'm like, yes, this sounds more in alignment with what we've always talked about. So as much as the addiction is still something we enjoy helping clients with, I think we still get that baked into this. And this is much more in alignment with where we see this going and growing.
I totally agree. I mean, do you, Laura?
Yeah, I do. You mentioned you had a price point there. You threw out $75. And I do want to say, like, that's where I really struggle of what our price point should be, especially if we get specialized like that. For example, right now for an initial assessment, we tell people to plan on about 75 minutes. Often, I go over that time because I feel like I'm concierge and I'm not going to watch the clock, right? That's sort of a benefit of paying cash that people get. So we're $250 for that. And then we're $125 for follow-ups. And we typically tell people, plan on about 30 minutes. We do have some package options. I've had 2 people take advantage of that. It's basically, your initial and 4 follow-ups and you basically get a follow-up for free is kind of the discount on that. So you had mentioned $75 a month, sort of more that club membership type. And I guess I'm just not sure how to do that. Is lowering our price and making it monthly sort of a better model?
Well, yes and no. Some people prefer to pay just the flat rate for a visit, for example, like $120 for the visit or whatever, right? They follow up with you every 3 months or as needed, that sort of a thing. Some patients prefer that model, while other patients do prefer more the subscription-based model because it's kind of like a set it and forget it thing. And they also derive more value out of it because they know that you're there for them when they need it. They don't have to really, come out of pocket for the $120 and hope that you have an appointment and that kind of a thing. If you set up more of a concierge psych-based practice, it's going to need to kind of follow the direct primary care model, but it's for psych. But it's going to be even more specific. It's going to be for trauma and addiction, right? I mean, I think both can work. I like the subscription-based models for most other niche services because patients get more value out of it when you also include like the treatment with it, the medication with it, that sort of a thing. You guys with a psych practice, I don't know if you can dispense medications out of your practice, but if you can, you could do that. But Suboxone, all that stuff is controlled. You're opening up a can of worms. I would advise against it. So you might have difficulty including treatment medication into that subscription program as well. So, with niche services like testosterone replacement therapy in men, the price includes the visits, includes the testosterone, includes everything, right? So for you guys, though, it's going to need to be more of like your value proposition here. The value that you're delivering to the patients is more that DPC, that direct primary care kind of model. You are there for them whenever they need it. You can guarantee an appointment with them within 48 hours, that sort of a thing. Another thing from a business owner standpoint is that it provides a recurrent income. It's predictable income that does not really fluctuate. You put people on an automatic payment plan, and then, a couple times a month, you can expect just this large boom deposit to your bank account. And another thing too is that some people forget about it. Like you might be like one thought going through your guys' mind right now, be like, oh God, I could just imagine some of these patients just blowing up my phone all the time. Yes, that is going to happen, but it should be the minority. Most people who have that kind of income that can afford that are probably busy. So yes, you will get some pain in the ass patients. No question about it. Of course you will. All right. Welcome to healthcare.
Sure.
But a large percentage, probably you won't really hear from that often.
So a follow-up question to that, if it's not just our services, like the medication management component, but we also bake therapy into that, do you think it's wise just to make that under one lump sum? Like, let's say it's $250 a month, but you get us, like our services for medication management, plus you get, let's say 2 1-hour therapy sessions, or you get 4 groups, or I don't know, something, kind of make a model that fits that. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly what you do. You create a model that includes all of that. And the more that you can include, while still ensuring that your bottom line is preserved, the more valuable it's going to be for the patient. And so you guys will just have to really sit there and think that through. Like, how much is your time worth? What is it that you're willing to do? How many patients do you have to get that break even point? You guys are just going to sit down with a piece of paper and just really start running some numbers and figuring out what it is that your patients use and what it is that they want. I can't relate to people who have traumatic anxiety and addiction problems. I just can't relate to that. So I don't know what that kind of thing looks like. You guys do though.
Yeah. So 2 follow-up questions, and I can just put them both out there. So one, just go to the person who, for our website and just have them just kind of scrap it and just remake it with this new model. And then 2, with this aesthetics arm that we like, the wellness component of this, there are wellness things we can do that don't include aesthetics that would be an adjunct to this. Do you say that we continue with the aesthetics component, or do we just like table that? I don't know. Does that seem like it's, again, getting away too much from like our specific focus niche?
Yeah. Number one, the website. I mean, you can still use the same template, the same formatting and that kind of stuff. All you're doing is changing content. It's literally all you're doing. Right.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, you can have your web developer do that, but if you have, if you somewhat understand how to do that yourself, you can just log in and just change the content yourself if you want. All you're changing is wording, right?
Yeah, Laura is much more gifted at that than I, and she and her husband built our first one, and they did a wonderful job.
Okay.
So it would be easy to do, I think.
Yeah, Laura. Yeah. So you just go in there, and it's just, you're still using the same format and everything. You're just changing some wording. You're changing some pictures. You're just doing some formatting stuff, It's just not that hard. Yeah.
I do want to say that I failed to mention this part because I want to bring up our therapy piece. Our therapist has his own referrals that are coming into just him. And sometimes those end up in being medication management for Jess or I. So I do think people sometimes reach out to therapy a lot, initially before they turn to medications. So he's sort of not only a referral source for us from within the practice, but then we're also a referral source for him. So I would maybe want to suggest, no matter how many therapists we get, that we sort of preserve some piece of people just wanting therapy, that they can come to our practice and just get therapy that's maybe outside of that addiction and trauma, or not, or just
You're,
be a trauma therapist.
yeah, you're steering away from your niche now. This is what happens with a lot of business owners, especially nurse practitioners. And I don't know why. Start adding in other stuff. You start getting shiny object syndrome. Oh, but we'll keep that though. I want to keep that. I like that. We're going to keep that though, but we're going to change everything, or I want that. We're going to add that now to it. Like, you really got to be focused here. It would be like me deciding to start offering Suboxone in my men's health practice. It just doesn't make sense. So just keep that in mind.
So what I hear you saying is that the therapy that we offer should be addiction and trauma based only. So if the therapist wants to do the couples counseling that they already have in our established business, things like that, then that needs to be separate with that therapist, not
Okay.
a part of what we're trying to do.
Correct. Like, I mean, okay, imagine you're a patient. You land on your website. Oh, okay. I'm looking for couples counseling. What the hell is this about Suboxone and heroin and stuff? Jesus, they're going to click off the website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right? Like, it doesn't make sense. It has to be congruent to what you do. So, like, trauma and addiction is what you do. Guarantee you there's at least a couple hundred people, and the millions of people that are in your area. I guarantee you there's a couple hundred. I guarantee it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So either that therapist can continue with that on his own, or if they continue at the practice, it's not something that we advertise. They're grandfathered in, but we don't continue to make that part of what we're advertising by any means.
Right. Like, if,
Got it.
for example, during therapy, it comes to like, that's what they need and they want to keep doing it. Sure. Why not? Yeah, but you're not advertising it.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense.
And so that should answer your other question about the aesthetics.
Yeah, it does. Okay. And then as far as marketing goes, like, I've heard you talk about geo marketing a little bit. Is that, again, really not tech savvy by any means, but is that something I can tailor the Google ad to, like, for a certain zip code? Is that how that works?
Yeah. So when you go in there and you're doing the Google search ads, you can put within 5-mile radius of this 7-Eleven here on the corner. Like, you can just select whatever locations you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And
Yeah.
I have a question. I know this is out of our niche, so I'm not shiny objecting here. Well, maybe a little, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on branching out to licensure in other states where we're at is a very conservative state, still requiring collaborative. There are several other states now that don't. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a growth thing. Like, I think once you get this narrowed down, you work out all the kinks, you figure out what it is that you're doing, the focus, your systems, your protocols. Like, once you figure out all this stuff, that's going to be more like that's going to be the next step of growth. I think that you should just try to maximize what you got in front of you right now. And then 6 months from now or whatever, hey, let's get a license in Nevada or whatever. And let's begin marketing there as more of a telemedicine based, addiction trauma clinic. And then that's going to just open up an entire another can of worms for your business. And, we can hop on another call 6 months from now and go over that strategy.
Awesome.
I like that idea.
Yeah. It'll be a good, again, temperature check on, hey, how much have we grown? How much have we applied this? And what does it look like now?
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, from a marketing standpoint with this, I don't think there's really a whole lot to talk about. I think if you change your website, I think if you change your name, especially on the Google listing as well, you have the blog posts and these sorts of things on there. I think that's going to make it a lot easier for people to start finding you. And then you do just a little bit of some free boots on the ground kind of marketing, get out to some therapists, get out to some Narcotics Anonymous meetings, that sort of stuff where your patients are, hand out flyers, hand out brochures. I think that, and then maybe just tinkering around with that Google search ad, I think that's all you need to do. I wouldn't do much else right now.
No, that sounds great.
I say skip social media right now. Don't bother with it.
Works for us. We're not big social media fans, so I like it.
Yeah. Well, anyways, you guys have any other questions? I mean, I think this is a good starting point. I think that you just need to do some rebranding, and I think it'll help you guys stay a lot more focused and be able to stay in the cash game.
I really appreciate all your feedback. I'm wholeheartedly agree. I think for me, like, emotionally, how am I going to get rid of this Helix Health Group? I really like it. Flows off the tongue. So I don't know like how people do that. So I'm going to have to get my mind around that.
Helix Trauma and Addiction Health Therapy Clinic. I mean, just like, you can still keep Helix in it. Don't worry about that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I hear it. Yeah, I hear you.
Like
It's
Helix
just,
Health, Trauma and Addiction. I mean, it could be something like just right.
I'm with you, Laura, but I hear what you're saying, Justin. Are we married to the name and our original idea, or do we want the, the growth and the overall outcome of the practice success? So I hear what you're saying.
Right. If someone came up to me and said, "Hey, we want to change your name to Justin to David, we'll pay you $10 million. Hey, I'll change my name to David." Like,
No, yeah.
yeah. So anyways,
We appreciate your time. It certainly was much different than I thought. My mindset wasn't there, but as you say it makes so much sense. And I think there's a lot of really good stuff we can take away from this and make it into the thing that we actually envision. So thank you so much for your time and the feedback.
you guys are welcome. It's a pleasure to help.
really appreciate it, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, listen, I like to end the episodes with you guys asking me a question. Has there ever been a question that either one of you have wanted to ask me or listen to the podcast, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I have a question. I've heard you say a lot before to people that, I hear people talk about SEOs. Is that right? And I hear you talking about that a lot. And I don't know enough about that. And I'm not sure if that had to do with marketing or not.
Yeah. The search engine optimization that I talk about all the time, that's exactly what I was telling you about with the blog posts and that sort of stuff on your website. It increases content on your site, which then will basically make your website pop up higher on Google searches. That's all that means.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one quick question.
Okay.
You said that your first practice, you said you kind of had to scrap it. Was it your second practice that you had the success in? Like the first one was kind of a learning experience, and the second one you had all the success that you were looking for in?
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's where I developed this hatred towards insurance. And I said, I'm never going to do that ever again.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Great.
That's exactly what happened. Yep. I scrapped it. I pivoted. I started the other business. Boom, profitable. And here I am today. So, you know, yeah. So don't get down on your guys' self. Like don't get down on yourself. Scrap it, whatever. It's doing okay, but you do a hell of a lot better. So just pivot. And I think that you guys will grow. So
Awesome. Thank you.
all right. You guys are
Thank you
welcome.
so much.
Absolutely. You guys take care.
You too. Bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye. All right. I hope everyone enjoyed the episode with Jessica and Laura. I really enjoyed that episode. I really enjoyed talking with both of them. I think they got a pretty decent business. It just needs tweaked a little bit, just like a lot of other nurse practitioner businesses. The big point here is that you really just can't get married to an idea. You cannot get married to just a name, okay? Like you really need to be able to pivot. If your business is not doing well, you need to be able to change the name, change the service that you're offering, and pivot, okay? You have to. Sometimes it's better to just scrap an idea and move on to another one. They don't need to scrap their entire business. They don't need to do that. I mean, they have a business that's generating money. So it'd be stupid just to completely scrap it, but they just need to do some rebranding, especially if they want to stay cash-based. If they accepted insurance, I bet they would probably get busy doing the exact thing that they're doing. They wouldn't have to change anything. They just keep doing the exact same thing they're doing. They probably would get busy and they probably would start generating some income, and it probably would be pretty profitable. But if they want to stay cash-based and enjoy all the crap that goes along with accepting insurance, then you have to have a focused niche with a focused demographic. You have to really focus down on it. That's how you develop a profitable cash-based business. All right. Hope everyone enjoyed this episode. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks. Bye. Thank you for listening to the show. Quick legal disclaimer. The content of this podcast is meant for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be used as legal, financial, medical, regulatory, or practice-specific advice. For information pertaining to your specific legal, financial, medical, or practice-specific needs, please be sure to consult with your lawyer, CPA, medical director, and/or your state's practice laws and the most up-to-date clinical guidelines. As always, do your due diligence when it comes to any information found online and in podcasts. The content in this podcast is copyrighted by Galaxy Medical Southwest 2023 and cannot be duplicated, rebroadcasted, or reproduced without our written permission.